Hollywood, California, glamorous center of the movie industry, magnet for millions. The lucky ones get to live in Beverly Hills or cruise down Rodeo Drive. Among the winners in 1977 was Sylvester Stallone, whose film Rocky made him an overnight star after years of trying to break away from the crowds of hopefuls. The unlucky ones get to hustle on Hollywood Boulevard. Among the losers that year was Yolanda Washington, street walker and single mother, raped by two men and strangled in the back of a car. Later, she was dumped on the slopes of Forest Lawn Cemetery. At first, she was just one more statistic in Los Angeles' exploding crime rate. But her murder took on a horrific significance when 9 more women were strangled within a single month, November 1977, apparently by the same hands. On a hillside in La Crescenta, near the town of Glendale, was found the body of Judy Miller, aged 15, runaway and part-time prostitute. Again, 2 men had had sex with her just before she was strangled. 5 days later, another body was found, dumped near the golf course of Chevy Chase Country Club. Lissa Castin, age 20, dancer working as a waitress, had similar ligature marks around her neck, wrists and ankles as the other victims. Only 4 days after this, on the 10th, the body of Jill Barkham was found at Franklin Sin Drive in Mulholland. She had moved to LA from New York after a conviction for prostitution. Then, on the 17th, at the junction of Pico and Ocean Boulevards, the body of another prostitute was found. 17-year-old Kathleen Robinson was the only one with her clothes still on, and there were some doubts whether it was the work of the same killers. But the full horror really struck the city on the 20th, when 3 more victims were killed. Dolly Cepeda was only 12 years old. Her naked body was found on a garbage dump in Elysian Park with that of her friend, 14-year-old Sonia Johnson. Both had been raped and sodomized. The boy who found them thought at first that their bodies were store window mannequins. Earlier that day, the nude body of 20-year-old student Christina Weckler had been found on a street corner near Glendale. 3 days later, the naked, ravaged body of another student, 28-year-old Jane King, was shoved out of a car on the Los Feliz exit ramp off the Golden State Freeway. The last victim of this month of spree killing was found on the 29th, on Cliff Drive in Glassell Park. Lauren Wagner had been seen being forced into a dark sedan with a white top by 2 men, the older with bushy hair, the younger with acne scars on his neck. Los Angeles was in a panic. Streetwalkers defied their pimps and stayed indoors. Respectable young women refused to go out at night. The family of Lauren Wagner spoke of the difficulty of living with such a threat.
I had spoken to Lauren at a previous time about the strangulations. When I spoke to her, I said, I don't want to scare you, but keep this in mind. I don't know how she responded exactly. I know, Mom, don't worry, you know.
The police department responded by creating a combined task force from members of the Los Angeles Police, the Glendale Police, and the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. The press gave maximum coverage to the hunt for the Hillside Strangler, but the police took good care not to publicize their certainty that they were looking for 2 men. In general, they were frustrated by a lack of forensic clues, since each body had been carefully washed to destroy evidence. It was semen in the victims' bodies and bruising where they had been manhandled that proved that 2 men were involved. Several times, Police Chief Darrell Gates called press conferences to announce that the combined team was closing in on the killers. On several occasions, men who were reasonably believed to be likely suspects were arrested, but all were released after a few days. But there were leads, in particular the sighting of Lauren Wagner talking to 2 men who forced her into their car. Nevertheless, within 2 weeks, another victim had been found on a vacant lot in Alvarado Street, within sight of City Hall. 17-year-old call girl Kimberly Martin had been booked by phone to go to a client's home in the Tamarind Apartments in Hollywood. The man had asked for a blonde wearing black underwear, for whom he would pay $150 in cash. When the agency asked for the caller's number, he assured them he was at home. A later check on the number showed it to be that of the public library. The police interviewed everyone in the Tamarind Apartments, and one tenant said that he had heard screams. There were no more murders during 1977, but then on the 17th of February 1978, the naked body of Cindy Hudspeth was found in her orange Datsun halfway down a cliff below the Angeles Crest Highway, north of Glendale. The medical evidence indicated that the 20-year-old part-time waitress had been raped by 2 men. One blurred and indistinguishable palm print was found on the car, and police were interested in the fact that this latest victim lived across the road from the 6th, Christina Weckler. Then suddenly, the murders stopped. As the year went on, the police finally accepted that their stranglers must have moved away. The special squad remained intact, but its detectives were philosophical about their chances of a swift solution.
How long will you be on it?
Well, I won't be here forever, I know that, but I'll be on the case until it's solved or I retire.
The break they were hoping for came almost a year later, from hundreds of miles away. In Bellingham, Washington, the most northerly Pacific coastal town of the United States, 2 students went missing. Diane Wilder and Karen Mandick had been asked to house sit in the exclusive Bayside area while a burglar alarm was being changed. The security supervisor who offered them $100 for the job had specifically instructed them to say nothing, but Karen told her boyfriend. When their bodies were discovered in their abandoned car, the police questioned the security supervisor, Kenneth Bianchi. He said that he had never heard of the girls, that someone else must have been using his name. At first, they believed him. Then, in his house, they found items stolen from places he had been guarding. In his truck, they found the keys of the Bayside house and a woman's scarf. This belonged to Diane. Both girls had been strangled from behind, but not raped. The case against Bianchi looked conclusive, but he continued to insist that he had no memory of the murders. The Bellingham police now checked his background. He had moved to the town the previous May from Los Angeles. While there, he had been living in Glendale, part of the time at the Tamarind Apartments. Bellingham police rang the LA County Sheriff's Department to tell them of the suspect they were holding. By the time detectives had reached Bellingham to question him, they were convinced that they had found one of their stranglers. Jewelry from the bodies of some of the victims had been found in Kenneth Bianchi's house. Los Angeles police were at pains to explain how he had been among many possible suspects investigated without any connection being made.
I would like also here to clarify a point, because it keeps coming up, and that is that the media is aware that Mr. Bianchi's name was in the so-called clue file that was built by the joint investigation between the LA Sheriff's Department, the LAPD, and our organization. That name, Mr. Bianchi's name, got into that file as a result of another investigation having nothing to do with these murders whatsoever. But during the course of that investigation, information was developed that made him one of a number of suspects with no concrete tie to any murder. And so his name was put into the clue file with, as Chief Gates is trying to emphasize here, many, many, many other names.
It emerged that he had been questioned because he lived in the Tamarind Apartments. The Joint Task Force boss emphasized the scale of the problem facing the police.
There has to be probably in the neighborhood of 8,000 to 9,000 people that were probably listed as suspects, but it was obvious that they all couldn't be suspects. We had probably a neighborhood of 50 that we thought were fairly good.
Back in Bellingham, Bianchi still claimed to have no memory of the killings and agreed to be questioned under hypnosis with extraordinary results.
23, 24, 25.
A foul-mouthed and vicious second personality emerged, who hated Ken and wanted to be rid of him.
The Stevie that we were talking about. Hello. What's your name?
Steve?
What's your last name?
You're has been trying to get me to leave him. You know, I was doing fine, you know. I come out whenever I felt like it. Now you gotta stick your goddamn nose in this whole shit mess. I want the out of the way. He's been a hassle to me all my life.
How so?
He thinks he's so good. You know, one time I used to like that asshole.
You were good friends back then.
One time. But he just won't listen. You know, there's a right way to do things, and there's my way to do things, and my way has always been the right way. You know, nobody's worth it out there. It's just a up world. Can't come out, but I can see what he's doing, and man, he has got to wise up, you know. I want to get out, I want to stay out, and it, it's all there is to it. I'm just a better person than him.
Then came the assertion that Steve had taken over Ken's personality to kill the girls in Bellingham.
He got himself into a jam. I killed those broads, you know, to smarten him up, to show him that he couldn't push me around. He knew one of them. The other one came along for the ride.
How did you do it?
Strangled him.
With what?
Plain as that.
With what?
Strangled him with cord. Nothing to it.
Did you bring
It's
the
a
cord
breeze.
along, or was it there?
You bet. Nope, brought it along.
Where did you get it from?
Got it from my basement.
Well, why did you have him go there? How did you have him go there?
Oh, it was a cinch, man. You know, he used to be such a sap, you know. He left, I came. I did all the calling. I found out what her phone number was. I called Karen. I set it up so she could bring her girlfriend. I was finding it so hard to come out where I belong, you know. Do you understand that?
Where do you belong?
I belong out. Ken belongs gone. I belong out in the world where can I do what I want to.
What about his girl and baby?
Soon after this, Steve moved on to make a link with some of the Los Angeles killings and to implicate his partner and cousin, Angelo Buono.
What did you hope to accomplish by killing those two girls?
5 girls?
Did you watch him kill them all?
You bet I did.
You can be sure that he killed those 5.
Positively, without a doubt.
Did you kill any down there?
If I did,
How many?
4 of them?
Okay, that makes 9. Anybody else you knew that killed anybody else?
No. What a team we were.
You sure were. Sounds like you're pretty busy.
Yep.
All during what period of time?
A while back,
Well, during 1 month, 2 months?
over a couple of years, maybe about a year. I had no problem coming out with him. No problem whatsoever. Until he moved in with Angelo.
Well, how did you two decide to kill girls in the first place?
Just sitting around shooting the shit. I asked him if he ever killed anybody. He thought he was talking to Ken. He didn't think anything of it. He said, I don't know. Why do you want to know? I said, well, what does it feel like? He said, I don't know. I said, well, we should find out sometime. He said, sure, okay. And we did.
How long after that did you?
Week and a half.
Who killed who?
I killed the first broad.
Who was she?
Some black broad, I don't remember her name.
Where you
Names aren't
where'd
important.
you pick her up?
Downtown?
How'd you happen to pick her up?
She was a hooker. Angelo went and picked her up. I was waiting on the street. He drove her around to where I was. I got in the car. We got in the freeway. I her and killed her. We dumped her body off, and that was it.
How did you kill her?
Strangle them all. It's the easiest way to go.
With what?
Cords,
Did you bring it with you?
bags. You bet.
Bringing bags.
Bags. What you do is you take cellophane bags, and you just twist them up real tight. There's nothing to it.
Several psychiatrists now agreed that Ken Bianchi had a genuine multiple personality. The police were appalled, since the testimony of a mental patient would be inadmissible in court. They were convinced that Bianchi was only feigning hypnosis. So one of the prosecution experts casually mentioned in Ken's hearing that genuine multiple personalities have more than one alter ego. Right on cue, at the next interview, another emerged.
Now's not the time to be shy, Billy. Come on out, Billy. Billy, come on, Billy. Come on, Billy. Come on out, Billy. Come on, Billy. You are Billy.
Dr. Ellison.
You have not seen me before, have
Nice
you?
to meet you. No, sir.
You hid out the last time I was here.
Yes.
Why did you do that?
Well, I don't know. Just curious.
Under hypnosis, Bianchi was later made to hallucinate that his lawyer was sitting beside him. When he shook hands with him, prosecution experts knew he was a fake, since genuine hypnotized subjects never touch their hallucinations. As preparations were being made for a judicial hearing at which Bianchi would claim insanity due to multiple personality, Los Angeles police found the evidence which they believed would destroy his claim. They discovered that he had placed a fake advertisement for a job in psychology in a Los Angeles paper. One of the applicants had sent some of his academic papers, and Bianchi had used these to obtain a false diploma in psychology from California State University. Bianchi's defense lawyers stuck to the claim that the police were dealing with a rare phenomenon, a genuine multiple personality who had committed a series of savage murders while possessed by an alter ego and who genuinely could remember nothing. The Bellingham police were equally determined to ensure that Bianchi should not use this as an excuse to escape execution for his crimes. In the background, the Los Angeles police waited to discover whether their killer and main witness against his accomplice would be available to them. At the hearing on the 19th of October 1979, Bianchi was found sane. He immediately pleaded guilty to the Bellingham murders and 5 of those in Los Angeles. The judge agreed to sentence him to life imprisonment, provided he agreed to testify against his cousin.
To even begin to try and live with myself, I have to take responsibility for what I've done. And I have to do everything I can to get Angelo Buono and to devote my entire life to do everything I possibly can to give my life so that nobody else will hopefully won't follow in my footsteps.
Triumphantly at last, back in Los Angeles, Police Chief Gates was able to gather the press together and announce what seemed to be the final links to solve a long-running and baffling case.
About 20 months ago, Yolanda Washington was found strangled. In the intervening period, as all of you know, we've had a great deal of difficulty in putting a case together. We now believe that we have a case put together which we plan to submit to the district attorney sometime later this week. We believe the evidence will support the fact that Kenneth Bianchi is involved in 7 murders in the city of Los Angeles, 2 under the sheriff's jurisdiction and 1 under the in Glendale. Well, I'm not prepared to go into any of the evidence that we believe will support it, but we feel very confident that we do have the evidence.
But his confidence soon seemed premature. Virtually no direct forensic evidence could be found to link Angelo Buono to any victim. An automobile upholsterer and small-time pimp, he was reputed to hate women and enjoy humiliating the girls who worked for him. Police tracked down some of them, who confirmed that Buono and Bianchi had lured them with offers of jobs as models and forced them to work as prostitutes, beating them and threatening them with death. Almost the only evidence linking Angelo Buono to the Hillside Stranglings was his cousin's confession, and Bianchi was now attempting to renege on his plea bargaining deal. By July 1981, concerned by the possible collapse of their star witness, the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office proposed that all the murder charges against Buono be dropped, and that he should be tried later for pimping, rape, and sodomy. But Judge Ronald George was outraged and refused to consider the possibility. The police had found a piece of fiber on one victim's eyelid, which was similar to material taken from Angelo Buono's house. Various witnesses had identified him as one of the men seen talking with some of the girls. Given the horrible nature of the crimes, the judge insisted that the trial must go ahead. The trial of Angelo Buono started on the 16th of November 1981 and lasted until 1983. It was the longest murder trial in American history. Over 250 witnesses were called. The 200th was Kenneth Bianchi, who spent 5 months in the witness box. His testimony was damning for his cousin. Bianchi had been persuaded to be cooperative when the judge reminded him that he was violating his plea bargaining agreement and could be sent to Washington's notoriously harsh Walla Walla jail. Buono's lawyers attempted to discredit witnesses and claimed that testimony obtained under hypnosis should be inadmissible. The judge ruled that Bianchi had been faking both hypnosis and multiple personality, and that his testimony would stand. The defense then submitted that Bianchi had committed the murders alone, and that his testimony against his cousin Buono was an elaborate attempt to shift the blame. Once again, the judge refused to accept that the whole case against Buono was a conspiracy and directed the jury to ignore this suggestion. The jury retired on the 21st of October 1983. Returning 10 days later, they convicted Angelo Buono of the murders of Lauren Wagner, Judy Miller, Lissa Kastin, Christina Weckler, Dolores Cepeda, Sonia Johnson, Jane King, Kimberly Martin, and Cindy Hudspeth. Possibly influenced by the fact that Kenneth Bianchi had escaped execution by plea bargaining, the jury decided that Buono should not receive the death sentence. The judge was openly regretful.
I would not have the slightest reluctance to impose the death penalty in this case were it within my power to do so. Ironically, although these 2 defendants utilized almost every form of legalized execution against their victims, the defendants have escaped any form of capital punishment.
Both men are now serving life sentences. Buono without the possibility of parole. Bianchi with possibility from 2005.